Welcome back to Apocalypse and Genesis. Like you, I was a lifelong victim of Western Civilization 101, the idea that humanity has been on a 6,000-year-old quest of evolutionary self-improvement, homogenizing the ancient bloodlines. In our arrogance, we assume we have reached the ancient mystical summit of illumination and are now prepared to conquer the stars. The only thing holding us back from glory is our intractable addictions to war and usury, and some nagging old stories about how the Tower of Babel must be destroyed before humanity gets too big for its britches. The central idea being that there is something deeply flawed in humanity, and it has nothing to do with the benevolent beings who placed us here as part of their genetic farm experiment on a slave planet designed to extract resources for the empire. The scriptures I grew up with told me there is such a thing as truth, and that by the end of history we will actually be ready to hear it. In the Old Testament it says, "Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants the prophets." Amos 3:7. And in the New Testament it says, "For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light." Luke 8:17, which the former Pharisee Paul flips on its head, saying, "Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him to whom we must give account." Hebrews 4:13. So let's look carefully at the picture for a moment. The God who sees and reveals everything is the conehead in the middle. And humanity is apparently a centrally managed enterprise of various species and races from far-flung corners of the galaxy. And the key to running this place is telepathy through a space alien impersonating a reptilian human, because it's the Draconians who originally owned and populated this place. The stones tell us our masters are due back shortly to restart humanity from a now due cataclysm, that we've hit the wash cycle of history, and now it's time for God to stretch over Jerusalem the measuring line of Samaria and the plummet of the house of Ahab, and I will wipe Jerusalem as one wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. See 2 Kings 21:13. The outstanding question of the hour is whether America, on the eve of its periodic demise by flood, will throw its entire arsenal against the Arabs and communists out to destroy poor little Israel, or whether that little nation state erected on the bones of Canaanites and Palestinians might now serve as the sacrificial goat sanctifying the new humanity. Their bloody altar stone becomes the cornerstone of the foundation or the head of the arch. The great eternal question for those raised on the Bible comes from Asaph's lament. "We see not our signs, there is no more any prophet, neither is there any among us that knoweth how long." Psalms 74. Near as I can tell, the heart of heaven had two keys. One was the cosmic cross, drawn at the cusps of Pisces, Aquarius, Sagittarius, Scorpio, Virgo, Leo, and Gemini, Taurus, observing a ram cycle of 6,400 years. And once you arrive the great year, you're to focus on a seasonal event at Orion, at which time Lord Baal will show up in the guise of Michael with his angels in tow. At that time, Earth would rock to and fro, Isaiah 24:20. In the Bundahishan 4, Zoroaster claims we go clockwise at Taurus and counterclockwise at Aquarius. The whole thing apparently takes place over the course of months, and we're due to get started about the time of the next Jupiter Sun in Gemini. I just bought a Native American stone where the old serpent last descended upon the center star of Orion's belt. And I believe this time he'll zoom past Saturn, heading for the sun, and the resulting destruction on Earth will provide occasion for the great reset the elites have been preparing. It will foreshadow the promised occasion of the New World Order or God's kingdom, your choice. The stone above tells the tale of the Scorpio creation. The Trinity showed up. The sun cast a great super flare at the appearance of the eye of God, and a family of 8 people repopulated the earth. That sounds a lot like the story of Noah's family in 3100 BC. Like this time, it was then a story of the south shall rise again, and the meek shall inherit the earth. It's like Benjamin Paravicini used to tell us. We'd best start packing our bags for Argentina because the North is going to hell in a handbasket once the volcanoes explode, the nuclear reactors go Fukushima, and the nations decide to nuke the imperial aggressors who actually believe they're the good guys. What did I miss? Here you have the Leo creation, a story of reversal. Isis was in charge up until one Sar ago, and then around the time of the Trojan War and the Exodus, men got tired of listening to women governing civilization, and it was time for the He-Man woman hater clubs. And there was one usurpation after another. Look at the history of the Zacinthians. Helen was usurped by Menelaus, causing her to abandon home for Troy. Clytemnestra was usurped by Agamemnon, so she had him killed by Aegisthus. And then she was usurped by Orestes, who won and she died. Aeetes overthrew Amanda of Colchis. Penthesilea slayed Hector and loved Achilles. His story is the story of men acting like snakes and blaming their plight on women. It's really quite sad. So here you have the dragon, the one who is supposed to come solve everything with a 1-2 punch. First comes the destroyer, Planet X, advanced man of the Trinity, and they called him lots of things, some good, some bad. Most recently, they characterized him as the Lamb of God who comes to take away the sins of the world, which comes down to a destruction of America and Western Europe. Right now, you don't believe me, but get yourself a Deagle Country Projections report for 2025 and tell me what you see. All the rebels, the non-Jews, were told to get the hell out of Eretz Israel or be obliterated in time for the apocalypse, and you can go to America or Europe. And the people knowing the secret of Herodotus Book 2, Chapter 142, the old priesthoods of the Egyptian Masons and the Hebrew Kabbalists, would be safe at the pivot of the planet. And I apologize for my cynicism. I'm not really a racist, just telling you the truth. We're following a plan, and it's probably on your bookshelf. There's really no telling where they first landed, but the colonizers who looked like coneheads ruled the earth. It wasn't all about cranial deformation in those days. They actually had oblong heads with a lot more brain power than the rest of us. If I had to guess, I would say the Jews with their 20 IQ points advantage we seldom talk about are their closest descendants. People with O negative blood, Rh null, golden blood would also be candidates. They were elitists since forever, so there was a lot of inbreeding in an attempt to keep the godlines pure, with a consequent legacy of genetic problems farther down the line, which is why we started tracking genealogies. When the same ancestors and surnames start popping up too close, you know it's time to change countries or marry a foreigner. The thing about the coneheads is that they knew the cycles of history. They became our rulers, priests, and prophets. They gave us a Bible that covers 6,400 years of history, called it 70 centuries, so God gets a breather. My suspicion is that they are also the ones still in telepathic contact with some humans. I mean, look around YouTube. All sorts of people think they're Jesus or Horus or Thoth, or they're talking to Isis, I mean Mary, I mean the Magdalene. But you get the idea. I mean, lots and lots of emissaries from God and Michael or Gabriel trying to get us ready in time for the next big thing, which, oh, by the way, sounds a lot like the last big thing. Look at the history there on the right. I mean, when you see a Leo sun at the axis and a full moon rising at Aquarius, one can easily get into trouble. At that point, expect a reversal between God's first of Aries and Mom's autumn equinox. The mother-father is that big Holy Spirit at the center of the zodiac. Don't be sexist. They are one. Here's another conehead skull to remember the apocalypse creation. The angel of death, you can call Itzamna or Tiamat, is showing up at the first of Aries, pregnant. Death will be here by the second equinoctial eclipse, but the sun will begin acting out near the summer solstice in the presence of two visitors approaching from the first of Aries. Look carefully at the image on the right and you can see Goddess holding a new Messiah who is due by the end of September. And by the way, I don't think it will be a newborn running the show. I think he and his twin flame are already walking the planet, preparing for the remaking of the world. By now, I'm thinking that the sons of God who were getting it on with the daughters of men in violation of the prime directive were the coneheads, the watchers, the Nephilim, the fallen ones, the shining ones. And they naturally gravitated into leadership positions around the planet due to their relative intelligence and their familiarity with the cycles of history. Contrary to the American fascination with narcissism and independence, most people are quite happy to follow the nearest megalomaniac with a plan. And you know how power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely? Well, yeah. Some of our greatest heroes of yesteryear turned out to be the ancestors of some of our most despicable villains today. Again, here is your god or goddess of life dealing with some of the ancestral races. Of interest is that spaceship over life's head marked to remember Orion. This year, that will be the summer solstice. And if that's our ride out of here in time for apocalypse, it will be right on time. In case you thought aliens are nothing but the rock carvings and petroglyphs of a shaman tripping balls on mushrooms, look at the skulls. The coneheads were real. The little people were real. The Ubaidi reptilians were real. So come late September when they show up to help out, please don't try to shoot them out of the sky unless your government calls them the root of all evil, at which point I suggest you find another country quick because reprisals won't be nice. It will be like showing up at the front with a pocket knife and a pea shooter. In fact, some of them should be showing up soon to ferry us out of here or point us to a portal. It's about that time. If you go to the ancient stories, you find something magic going on at the diamond formed by the cosmic cross. The ancients looked at the center of the sky between the pillars of Aries and Capricorn like the goddess conceiving or giving birth. I honestly expect it shortly after the summer solstice, but it could take until August. Nibiru Marduk was associated with Jupiter. Planet X was associated with Venus. As the sun pulls ahead of Jupiter, we should see Planet X headed this way with a red star behind, looking like almost an eclipse. One supposedly had a 7-year figure 8 orbit around both suns, and one with a 15-year perihelion. When the two objects line up in conjunction, that was considered God's third eye. It was a time of sacrifice and maybe a good Yeros Gamos to ring in the new age. But we get Ahura Mazda before we're toast. The Trinity supposedly arrives like a string of pearls. This time I believe it will descend from Pisces, but when they originally appeared in 2015, they were starting from Sagittarius. When we see the peacock angel, know that it won't be long until our planet starts dancing. I have an Etruscan plate showing the flood arrived 5 times a precession on the Ahau cycle and Ekpirosis 4 times on the Ram cycle. The only other marking on the plate is 4 depictions of Orion's belt, meaning I think that our troubles begin around summer solstice and we should see something beautiful in the next few weeks. Here are some of the big events this year, and I left off the Japanese tsunami scare of July 5th. What I like about my Seth stone is that it showed both of this year's eclipses, the Eye of Horus and the Eye of Ra, suggesting the pole shift, solar event, Eye of God, and Sirius supernova all show up somewhere near summer solstice. Mind you, I will be elated when I'm wrong by a month, a year, or a decade. I'm just telling you what I see on the stones. There's always a problem with the stones in that you can see a symbol of the heavens as a time, as a place, or as an event involving 2 sides of the universe. Interlocking triangles is a reversal. Diamonds in a cross is a 90-degree pole shift. Seth's attack, the rise of the beast taking the head of our last creator, will be a reversal. But some of the creation stones show a restoration of our current ecliptic, and the question is how soon? When I saw Tamara's drawing, I was absolutely floored. As I've said before, those with the second sight draw what they see. They're not necessarily looking at it as a matter of time or physics. So I'll give you my interpretation and she can disavow me when I'm wrong. Between the eyes of Horus and Ra, in other words, within weeks of summer solstice, comes a ray of darkness. And you can see that as the arrival of Kamazots, or the rise of Aquila like a phoenix, or the passage of Planet X across 2 suns. But the ancients saw the Trinity coming into view as 2 gods getting it on, resulting in a pregnancy of the universe, giving us 9 months to a brand new world. And they didn't always see the little red star on high as Son of God. Sometimes they saw it as the goddess herself. Depends on the misogyny of your priesthood running the country. The seal stone on the left shows a 90-degree shift of Orion, or a 180-degree reversal of Virgo with Pisces. The rise of Nibiru Marduk upon Crux, a nova of Sirius or Betelgeuse, and a fall of the Eye of God, which, as we've discussed, should show up between Saturn and Jupiter, between Pisces and Gemini. And it looks like we're going to be busy. The Master of the Animals is stuck between Pegasus on the left and Seth as the golden ass on the right. As near as I can tell, the only nominee at this point will be Saturn. He's still at the first of Aries, a cosmographic corner of the problem, whereas Orion will be the temporal corner of the problem. Picturing him with a hole in his belly makes me wonder if that's where we're to see the destroyer first appear, near Saturn. One of the stranger things we're supposed to experience at the Great Year is a drastically changing magnetic field. Some writers have suggested we'll go through a null zone before the planet changes polarity. Some of the ancients thought we would experience a 90-degree shift in very little time, whereas the quickest scientific paper I saw suggested a shift of 500 miles a month, with 4,000 miles remaining on our journey. Slower estimates would be more like the Lachamp excursion 42,000 years ago. The transition to reversal took 250 years, and the field stayed reversed for 440 years before going back to normal. I think something similar is about to happen, but on a much accelerated schedule. If you're at all concerned about our near future flying through the cosmos, I'm thinking it might be a good idea to think about your relationships with God and the power structure. Because the ancient take on this revelation is that our transition to the new world will be exceedingly painful, that you can choose to serve one or the other. And unless you're lucky enough to escape to the med, own a waterproof bunker, or have arranged for a cruise ship to nowhere, you're going to be in trouble. That the ones currently in charge are certifiably up to no good and must now be replaced. The shining ones are due back, promising to kick ass and take names. You might want to read up on the ancient myths that made it into the Bible for some insights. My apologies to anyone I might have upset on our journey. All I mean to suggest is that you take action today to address the desperation of tomorrow, because it's coming, and FEMA, it turns out, will be pretty close to useless. Your government will not save you unless you're on a very short list for the continuity of government. Hashem bless you and keep you, now and forever. Take care.